Welcome to the Lazy CEO podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-size companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another Lazy CEO podcast. My name is Jim Schleckser. I am your host and the founder of the CEO Project. Well, today we have a really interesting guest. We have Valerie Alexander. Valerie is a renowned expert on happiness and inclusion and a globally recognized speaker on the topics of happiness in the workplace. She has a very successful TED Talk called How to Outsmart Your Unconscious Bias. It's been viewed over 1 million times and has been used as an instructional tool on unconscious bias. So I think that's always a fascinating topic because it's sort of, you don't know that you are doing it and yet you are. So prior to that, she was a securities lawyer, an investment banker, a tech startup CEO, a screenwriter, and actually, I really don't care about anything else Valerie did. I want to talk mostly about this last topic, which is she wrote a Christmas movies for the Hallmark Channel. So we will get to that topic, I guarantee you. So Valerie, welcome to the Lazy CEO podcast. Glad to have you.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm very happy to be here.
I really appreciate it. So talk to me about happiness in the workplace. I mean, I've seen the stats on, the level of disengagement and, everybody kind of hates Monday morning. And I got to say, luckily, I am not in that camp. I love what I do, but I think I'm in a minority. So how should we think about happiness and how do we sort of move more people into that direction? Because that feels like a laudable cause.
Well, it is a hugely laudable cause because happiness is what makes people stick around. And look, retention eats recruitment all day long.
Amen. Yeah.
And if people would focus on what it takes to keep your employees there, that is keeping them happy. And one of the reasons you said you love what you do, because you don't have a manager.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. So the incidence of happiness in the workplace has been studied extensively for a very long time by Gallup, by the Harvard Business School, by Sonia Lubomirsky at UC Riverside. They all come to the same conclusion, which is what makes people happy in their jobs is having a sense of accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And think about that. I mean, think about what do you think of as a great day for you? It's like what at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I had a great day today. What happened in that day for you?
Yeah, I mean, made an impact for me. I made an impact with my clients. I mean, I got something interesting done.
100%. So all of these studies, Gallup calls it, you put your skills to their best use. UC Riverside calls it your sense of accomplishment. Harvard Business School says you made progress on work that matters. That is all people want from their jobs. Leadership, and especially the Wall Street-led leadership, gets this very wrong about employment. They think that employees are trading hours for dollars.
Right.
I give up my hours, I get dollars. And if you think of instead, you're investing your hours. Like we have a very limited number of hours. Hours are significantly more valuable than dollars. And so people want to invest their hours. They want to invest their hours in something that gives them a greater return than just dollars. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at your workforce, make sure each person has the opportunity to get a sense of accomplishment from what they do. And it's actually quite easy to do. You do it with accomplishment, you do it with autonomy. Make sure if someone knows how to do their job, don't have somebody looking over their shoulder telling them how to do their job. Mm-hmm. And then you have it with acknowledgement. Okay. Everybody needs the attaboy. Everybody. And one attaboy can wipe out 50 daggonnits it so easily. And what happens is in American workforces and global workforces, we have what I call accidental managers.
Right.
Yeah. As soon as I say accidental managers, everybody gets it instantly. Everybody's like, yep, I've always worked for accidental managers, or for me.
And define that. I mean, it
Yeah.
sort of intuitively resonate to it, but define it for me.
So there are two types of accidental managers. The first type are people who we put in charge of other people for a reason such as seniority,
Sure.
or education, or title, or they're just next in line, or they're the only one who will do it.
Yeah.
And we don't bother to make sure those people have managerial skills.
Mm-hmm.
I share the story. I started my work career, my work life at Great America in Northern California. I fudged the date on my learner's permit when I was 15.
Were you at Santa Clara?
Yes, in Santa Clara.
I used to go there as a kid, so.
Oh, you probably went there when I was working there.
I suspect not, but go ahead.
But thank you.
I think you may have me by a couple of years on the good side.
But so I started as, work sweeping up the patio. And then the next year I became a lead. And then the next year I became a supervisor. And when I was a supervisor, they finally gave me some training on what to do as a leader. And I was in the food service department. So my training was about how to create a schedule, food handling, provisions ordering. I was trained on where to park.
Yeah.
Nobody gave me 1 minute of training on how to speak to the people who worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And on my very first day as a supervisor, I made one of my employees cry. I was 17 and she was 16. We had been colleagues the week before.
Yep.
And she was doing something kind of slowly, and I made a joke about it that made everybody laugh. 5 minutes later, I looked over and she's crying. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "You made everybody laugh at me."
Ridiculing people in public is one of my favorite management techniques.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I like one of the techniques I train for people to pound in is acknowledge in public, but admonish in private.
Yeah, it's a good old saw.
Yeah, but I didn't even realize I didn't realize that I was doing that at all. And so these are the things that we have to be aware of when we're putting somebody in a management position. Do they actually have the mindset and the skills? I have a saying all the time: your employees don't appreciate sarcasm.
Yeah.
And people don't like that. But wow, many a truth is spoke in jest. And people say very mean things, then say, "Oh, I was joking."
Yeah. No. Inside every joke is a bit of truth. Absolutely right. 100%. Yeah. And well, that's by the way, that's what makes it funny. By the way.
Of course, it's funny because, as Homer Simpson says, it's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
But that's the first kind of accidental manager. The second kind of accidental manager, which you as an engineer will appreciate this as much as anyone: engineers, lawyers, doctors. They're managers without realizing they're managers.
Right.
And I work with the Association for the Advancement of Physician Recruiting, and I was asking them, so how much, when you're recruiting doctors, do you make sure they have any kind of managerial training?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Sorry, what?
What's that?"
When I had LASIK eye surgery, and I was living in San Francisco at the time, and there were 4 major LASIK eye centers there. And I went to all 4 of them to interview to make sure I was going to go to the right one for me. And my one question was, how's the turnover here?
Yeah.
Because I don't want unhappy people working on my eyes.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I wrote an article about people come for the mission and they leave for the manager, right? So they love the purpose. They love what the company's doing. Maybe they met the CEO and he or she is a fabulous individual and they inspire them. They go, "I got to work this place." They show up and then they get one of these managers, and that's the reason they leave. I used to actually analyze turnover clusters.
Oh.
Yeah. And right. And that would tell me when I had a bad manager in place, because I had a turnover cluster, particularly when there were A players turning over, which is, as a leader, you're like, that can't happen. You're expending my most valuable resource here because you're a bad manager. So that's how one of the ways I used to find these people.
Yeah, absenteeism and turnover are your two biggest
Yeah.
stats. The Gallup studies on it show that if you have a high happiness workforce versus in the highest quartile of happiness versus the lowest quartile of happiness, you have 41% less absenteeism.
Yeah.
You have 28% less turnover in low turnover organizations, but you have 58% less turnover. I'm sorry, the other one. 28% in high turnover organizations, but 58% less turnover in low turnover organizations.
Got it.
That one of my favorite stories. I like to talk to the manager person, but only when it's positive. I always, if I have a positive experience in a workplace, I always want to talk to the manager and I always want to let them know because they never hear that. And I want to make sure the employee is getting the feedback. So there is a grocery store called Sprouts. I don't know
Yeah,
if
sure.
okay.
Yeah. Is
So
this
there
like
was
an opposite of Karen, whatever that person is?
exactly. I am the reverse Karen,
Reverse
the
Karen.
Narak. But there was a Sprouts in Granada Hills, California, where I lived previously, and Sprouts is great. It is Whole Foods products at Trader Joe's prices.
Hmm.
But that particular Sprouts was miserable to go to. Like it didn't matter whether you went to the meat department, produce, the cashiers, it was the vortex of misery. They had this one cashier. She was so surly. I almost complained about her. And then I saw that her name tag said head cashier. I was like, great, their head cashier is a surly person in here. And I gritted my teeth and shopped there. And then over time, I started noticing it getting just a little better and a little better and a little better. And I had a really good experience at the meat counter one day. And then I had a really good experience in the produce department. And then the piece de resistance, I was going through the cashier who I literally would avoid. I went into her line and she was super pleasant.
Wow.
I thought, what is happening? So I said, can I talk to the manager? So the manager came out and I said, I just want to let you know your employees have become so nice and pleasant. And I'm really feeling the customer service. And I just appreciate it so much. I said, 6 months ago, I didn't even want to shop here. But, in the last 6 months, it has gotten really enjoyable and really more pleasant. And I just want to thank you. I don't know what you're doing differently. And he said, oh, I wouldn't know. I've only been here 5 months.
But
That answered the question. Now we know exactly what happened differently. They
Yeah.
got a good manager.
Got a good manager. Interesting. So, I mean, this could be a really short podcast. So we just train all the managers and we're good to go.
It's funny you would say that. Training the managers is really not that challenging. It's not the what you need is attention and intention. And when you have those two things, you get much better managers. You're training people not to put people down in public,
Sure.
to acknowledge the good work they're getting. Don't micromanage them. I have a way to train people how to speak to people, which is if every workplace operates by the tyranny of the urgent. Whatever is going wrong at that moment has to be addressed.
Sure.
And we don't train managers how to manage employee psyche around that, which is a person is working on something. They are doing something that you have asked them to do, that is their task, that is going to give them a sense of accomplishment that day. And then something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager says, "Ooh, stop that, go do that."
Yep.
That's the response, because that's leadership, man. That's taking care of the problem. Stop that, go do that. What they don't realize is the employee, as soon as they hear stop that, instantly, wait, am I doing something wrong? Cortisol racing through my bloodstream, because I think I'm a problem. Or did I cause the problem? When you're told go fix that, it sounds like I'm the reason that's broken. All we have to do is go up to the employees doing something and you say, thanks for what you're working on. Lead with appreciation. Thanks for what you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a much bigger problem right now. I need you to fix that. And when you're done with that, you can come back and finish this. And when you're done with that, go home for the day. Because if the employee puts out that fire, if they fix it and it's the end of the workday and they leave, they're not going home thinking, ooh, I put out a fire. Ooh, I fixed the problem. They're going home thinking, I didn't finish what I was working on.
Right. Right.
And then just tell them, like, I know you can handle it. That's the other thing. I played soccer for 14 years. I played in high school and college, and then I played semi-pro briefly in the Bay Area after that. And the way the coach communicates with you is everything about how you feel you're contributing to the team.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's so important. And so if we think about this from an employee perspective, when you set an expectation, people always rise to your level of expectation. You probably had this, Jim. Did you ever have a coach or a boss or a teacher who had low expectations of you?
Not particularly. They all sort of had a high level of expectation, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, so you live up to those expectations. When you see someone who has low expectations put on them, like probably seen this in workplaces where some man, oh, they can't handle this, but they'll try anyway.
Right.
Or we see coaches who sometimes say that to people, like, okay, I get it. You're not going to do this, but here's what we're doing.
Yeah. Alexander, it's the 75th minute. You can't screw it up too much. Go in, right?
Yes. Yeah, that is exactly what you want to hear.
I love it. I'm so motivated, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah.
Interesting. I also go back to the Daniel Pink book Drive, which I think is insightful. He talks about 3 fundamental motivators, which all relate to what you talked about, accomplishment, but autonomy, let me do the job the way I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Purpose, I'm contributing to a higher value thing here. And mastery, I have an opportunity to hone my skill to a level that I'd like to get to. Like, think software programmers or salespeople or whatever, that they like that. Why is it not? I mean, what you're describing here for managers is skill and will, right? There's technical matter of how you have the conversation, and there's will that I actually want to be good at this job. I want to be a good manager. So where do we lose the thread? And maybe how do we get back to it on management being a craft that people are very good or not so good, and it matters. It really matters, to your Sprouts example. So how do we get to that? Because that's what it feels like the gap is in this conversation.
Managers are people too. And that'll be the tagline of
I know.
Managers are people too.
There's your next TED Talk.
Yes. They need the same kind of workplace engagement and workplace satisfaction of anybody else. They need a sense of accomplishment. They need some bit of autonomy in how they do it, and they need acknowledgement for it. So if you are speaking to your manager, if you see somebody is doing a great job, go tell their manager, hey, that person's doing a really good job. Thank you for whatever you're doing to make sure that happens.
Right.
They're going to be very happy to hear that. The other thing that we have to make sure is that we show managers how much better the outcomes are when their employees are fully engaged. I make a big distinction between engagement and happiness.
Right.
The exact same managerial behavior gets you engagement and gets you happiness. Engagement is about the company and what the company wants. And happiness is about the employee. Nobody ever gets home at the end of the day and says, I felt really disengaged at work today.
Yeah, right.
They say I'm miserable at my job.
So say that again to me. So engagement is like that I'm committed to what the company is doing. I appreciate what they're doing. I want to be here. And happiness is more, help me understand the distinction.
I don't think employees are noodling on engagement at all.
Right. Nobody ever says that. I concur.
Right. Yeah. And so if you're thinking, the analogy I like is how would it go over if you said to your spouse, I'd like to make you more engaged in this relationship?
Yep.
Versus if you said, I'd like to make you happier. So
what is this? Engagement is an artificial MBA construct that people don't think about and we shouldn't worry about it? Or, okay, I'm obviously not still getting it.
Yeah. So. Engagement is the outcome of focusing on your employees' happiness.
Okay.
So if you're telling a manager, I spoke with a group of CEOs once where one of the CEOs in the room said, all the things I have to worry about, and I have to think about whether they're happy or not too. And I said, my response was, nope, only the ones you want to keep.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so if we tell managers, you are going to get a better outcome, your results will be better, not just with turnover and absenteeism. I mean, the stats are off the charts. Lower workers' compensation costs, lower theft, better customer service, less liability, less workplace bullying. The thing we have to say is whatever is reducing your culture eats strategy.
Yeah.
Just like, as I said before, retention eats recruitment. Whatever is hurting your culture is destroying your outcomes to the manager. And so when we have all these programs say, let's increase the engagement, and people think, how can I make them more engaged? And it's like, no, think, how can I make them happier? Because how can I make them happier gets you more engagement.
And what do we do? So I get it now. I think what do we do when the what would make someone happy is in opposition to the needs of the organization?
Then that's not a good fit for that person, and that's not a good employee and role fit. And I'll give you a perfect example of that.
I agree with that. Yes, and that was sort of the example I was thinking of. I love fill in the blank design work, and now you want to make me a salesperson, and I'm going to hate my life, right?
Right. So if they love design work, leave them in design work. If they love design work and they're great at it, one of the worst things we do, and again, from engineering, you'll appreciate this, we take the very best software developer and make that person the head software developer.
No. I actually had this experience. I had an exceptionally good engineer, a guy named Napoleon, and brilliant, like my best engineer by 50, 60, 70, 100%, best guy. Mm-hmm. And we turned over our VP of engineering, and I said, hey, Napoleon, I don't know if you'd be interested in the job, but I think you'd be exceptional at it. And he looks at me and he goes, what did I ever do to you that you would do that to me?
Right.
The man who knew what he wanted to do. He was awesome, right?
And so we have to find rewards for that person. You have to find you have to say, all right, then this engineer gets paid more than the other engineers, or they get a sabbatical, or they get a lab or a research space that other people
Funny enough,
get.
for engineers, give me really interesting problems and good work, and I'm a happy clam. And I paid him a lot of money too, but that was the big thing. Give him good work.
Yeah. When you take the best engineer and make that person the lead engineer, you are literally taking away the thing they love and that they're good at, which robs them of their sense of accomplishment.
Yep.
And then you're putting them in charge of the people who aren't as good as they are, which destroys everybody else's morality.
Interesting.
And so, but you did the smart thing. You went to him and you said, I have this role. Would you be interested in it? And a lot of companies don't do that. They say, oh, congratulations, you're the new head salesperson.
Yeah, that's called chess with humans. Right.
Yeah. Then you're a really bad chess player. Well, because it seems like such a great move to put these pieces here and then suddenly your queen is gone.
Bingo. Yeah, exactly. That didn't work out. Interesting. So does this work at all levels? Like if I'm a CEO, is there a cascading infrastructure here? Like if I work my leadership team, they'll mimic those behaviors into the organization. How does this work? Because there's a lot of CEOs and leaders that listen to this podcast. Directly give them feedback, but they should be doing, because we're talking about managers, and I've talked about the value of managers. They're super, super important. Right. But how do we get that to happen organizationally?
All culture comes from the top down.
Okay.
All culture, whether that's equity and inclusion, which is another area in which I do a lot of training and work, whether it's workplace happiness and engagement, the CEO's commitment to that outcome is what's going to make all the difference in the world. These things cannot come bottom up. So the CEO who has probably 9 to 12 direct reports, if that CEO is practicing this same accomplishment, acknowledgement, autonomy with their leaders, and then sets that expectation, and now you will treat your managers this way, and you will train your managers to treat their workforce this way, it all flows downhill perfectly. Yeah. It really effectively, and like with Sprouts, in a very short amount of time, you start to see that in the workplace. The one thing everybody in any kind of leadership role, and I don't mean manager, I mean a leadership role, has to be very aware of is if you have toxic people in your workplace.
Yep.
Do not tolerate the superstars if they're toxic. I don't care what you think they're bringing in. They are not bringing that in. They are costing you so much more.
I wrote an article about this, but it's about Netflix. They have a concept of brilliant jerks. You probably heard it, right? And they go, don't tolerate brilliant jerks. So I don't care how smart you are. If you're a jerk, you damage team performance so much that you've got to go.
Yeah. So. And when I work with organizations where they say, oh, we have a toxic person, but they're super valuable, or we can't do without them. I always give whoever their leader is, whether it's the CEO or just a manager, I give them homework, which I say, okay, I want you to go home and make a list of everybody you've lost in the last 2 years and rank how valuable they are, and then create concentric circles as to how closely they had to work with the toxic person.
It was my cluster comment from before, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't say, I have some homework for you and you can do it right now. Let's walk down the hallway and let's fire that person. I thought that was going to be the homework. Like, let's just get this over with, because every other pathway is much more painful. So.
Oh yes, it's what is it? Hire slowly, fire quickly.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
but then, I had someone say to me about a toxic person in their workplace. It was a general counsel of a very large retailer. And I was working with them, and he said straight up, I can't lose her. She's too valuable. And I said, literally, if she got hit by a bus on the way into work tomorrow, would your entire department collapse, or would people step up?
There you go. Exactly.
So
how do you hire for this? I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about hiring, empathetic, passionate, caring managers that want to get the work done, but do it in a really positive way with people that are affirming in their engagement, right? I'm going to bet you a buck that they're very hard to hire, because if they're like that, they're very happy where they are and they're doing a great job and nobody wants to lose them. So how do we find these people? How do we get managers that form in this way, skill and will?
There's 2 ways.
Yep.
Develop for them internally.
I figured you were going to say that. Yep. Okay.
And look at the people who we have to stop looking at skill set.
Yep.
To put people into roles if those skills are teachable. If there is a skill that's teachable, then have a platform to teach that skill and just look at potential. Look at the person. There's a great line. I wish I could remember who said it. You might recall it, which is, you can always tell who the leader is. They're the ones with followers.
Yeah, I get the inverse. What's the definition of a leader? It's somebody that people will follow, right? It's the same Perfect. Comment. Yeah.
So look in your workplace at who your influencers are. Look in your workplace at who everybody rallies behind and follows. And then start to develop that person with the skills they need, because they already have the personality that can, that an army will march behind.
Yep.
And that's one way, is identify. And back to the equity and inclusion part of it, go outside your comfort zone to identify those people. It might be the last person that you imagined, or it might be someone who doesn't look like anyone else who's been in a leadership role in your company. And then once you put them in that role, 100% support them. Don't say, okay, we're giving this one person a chance, but we'll see. Because, the one of the things when we talk about privilege that some people have in workplaces and other people don't, is people have the privilege to fail. If you think I'm going to be great at something and I stumble, you'll help me out. You'll give me more resources. Back to that expectation. If you think I'm going to be terrible at something, but you're giving me a shot and I stumble, say, oh, see, proved it. They were going to be terrible.
Yeah, we call that confirmation bias, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I knew they were going to be terrible, and there's the data to support it, right?
There they are. Yeah. So that's thing one, is look, don't be afraid to look internally. Don't be afraid to take giant risks on who you put into roles just because they don't have a particular, somebody doesn't know how to use Salesforce. So what? You can learn how to use Salesforce in a couple of weeks.
Right.
So that's one. The other thing, I didn't create this technique. I've read about it. Take someone out to lunch during the interview process and arrange in advance for something to go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I hired my assistant, I asked her for references to the people she'd worked for before. And I called all those people, and then I asked each of those people, do you have someone who she worked with that I could speak to. And I spoke to her colleagues.
There you go.
And every one of her colleagues was like, oh, she was so helpful. Oh, she was so great. Oh, I loved how, like, she would jump in for anything. Like, that's what I need to hear. Because anybody can manage up to the boss. But when you're sitting next to somebody in an office, you really get a sense of how they are as a person. And by the way, my assistant is the most fabulous person in the world. She is amazing.
It's a lot of work to do that, though. I mean, that's a lot of time on the phone to get that all figured out. So that's your high or slow comment that you made.
Yeah.
I think that technique, something similar to what was described in Who, which we're a big fan of. Who as a book about hiring people by Jeff Smart. Great book. Fascinating. I just worry when you talk about be aggressive and putting people in managerial roles who maybe don't have the prior skill set. I do worry about them being successful, right? Because it's embarrassing for them to get elevated, maybe from their peers, and then we go,
Didn't work.
It's not. Yeah, now what do we do, right? We may have scorched a really good person on that move, and I hate that.
The opportunity there is then to go in baby steps. Then see what little bit of more responsibility can I give them? What little bit more can I add to theirs? And again, with the commensurate increase in pay or reduction of other duties. We can't test people to see if they're good managers while we're completely overwhelming them with the job that they're doing. Plus, you have to manage these people as well. That's not fair. But there is a possibility that someone is not going to be a good manager when they get put into a managerial role. Yeah. And then you made a really good point about the, I don't want to say humiliation, but whatever personal feeling they feel, then move them laterally and then find the right role for them without it seeming like a demotion.
That dive has a level of difficulty on it, though. So to be fair, right? Yeah. Okay, well, this was great, Valerie. Did we miss anything that we should have talked about that we didn't get to? As a nice, rousing kind of around the table conversation, but what did we miss?
We talked about high expectations, and that for me is one of the most important things you can do is express confidence in the people who work for you. Because when you say to somebody, I know you got this, I know you can do it, they are going to give you 100% their all to try to do it. And there's a thing in brain science called priming. You can prime somebody and they will believe they will have the experience you primed them for. So if a task is awful or onerous, you can say, we get to, not we have to, change have to get to. We have to do our taxes. Oh, we get to do our taxes. It sounds ridiculous.
I'm going to struggle with that one.
I know. But doing your taxes is great. You get to see where your, boosts were, where your excess costs are. There's a lot of benefit that come from doing your taxes. But you can prime somebody to say, I have a fantastic new leadership role for you. And I know you're going to succeed in it. And I'm here for you if you feel like you're struggling. If you say that to someone at the outset, they're going to be excited about it and they want to give you their all. If you say to someone at the outset, look, this is a horrible position and nobody has survived in it, but we think you have just the skills for it. You're already priming them to think it's going to be a miserable experience. I always say, every morning when your kid leaves for school, say, you're going to have an amazing day.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have an amazing day. So that's
fun. Funny enough, I would have that conversation when I would promote women into significant roles more often than with men. And they'd go, Jim, I don't know. Are you sure? I'm like, and I would always say, I would not be asking you unless I was completely certain that you're going to be successful at this. That's why I'm asking you. But honestly, so I think there's a bit of a gender delta here on perceived capability, whether true or not. And men probably overperceive and women maybe underperceive just a teeny bit. So anyway, so I think you have to be really helpful for all people, but I think particularly for women to say, look, I know you have this. I know you have the capability. That's why I'm asking you to do it. So awesome. Well, let's end on this. The Hallmark Christmas story. So let me guess. Horrible business guy from the city goes to the country, falls in love with the Christmas tree farm owner because she's a gorgeous widower.
Hard-driven deal maker in San Francisco, goes back to her Michigan small town to sell her, her mother long ago dead house, and finds out that her mother had been hiring a handyman to decorate it for Christmas every year, even after she was gone. And she doesn't want to decorate it for Christmas because she hates Christmas. But
I was so close.
they're very, when I got asked to come in and pitch a Hallmark Christmas movie,
Yeah.
I had never watched a single Hallmark Christmas movie. So I sat down over 4 days and I watched maybe 40 of them.
Oh my gosh.
And I tracked every single story beat in every one. And then I ranked them and I found the 25 most common story beats. And then I constructed a pitch. I actually 8. I had 8 pitches. I was working with a producer who'd asked me to come in. He narrowed it down to 4. We walked into Hallmark with 4 of those pitches, and they bought the Memories of Christmas in the Room. It was called Will You Marry Me, which I loved as a title much better, but they changed it to Memories of Christmas, but they bought it in the room because, again, know your audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
My Hallmark exec told me, she said, you know what we loved most about working with you is you came in and said, oh, here's what you do. Here's how I can do it. She said, I can't tell you how many writers come in and it's like, here's how I can fix what you do.
No, we've got a formula. Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, totally.
Their formula works.
Well, Valerie, this was just a ton of fun. I really appreciated talking to you. You had tremendous knowledge that you transferred and create a lot of value today. So thank you for that. And I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me in. This was just a fun conversation. It went by so quickly. I can't believe what time it is.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And everybody, we'll see you next time on the Lazy CEO podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.